Hi everybody, welcome to week 3. It's nice to be joining you again. So I am really looking forward to reading your overall practicum goals and looking at your NEPD forms. I hope all those directions made it easier and not more confusing to complete those assignments. But I'm really interested in looking forward to seeing what you want to overall concentrate on for your practicum. So it's exciting. I really enjoy that part of teaching, kind of sharing those thoughts and ideas with you as you go through your practicum. All right, this week is a total crazy week for me. You can see I'm in my scrubs, not in them very often. Tons of training today. I've got tons of special needs students coming back to school next week. I've got tracheostomy students, I've got kids on insulin pumps, I've got kids on with G-tube feeding, seizures, all sorts of stuff. So I'm doing training. My students are spread across 12 different schools, and I've usually got several classrooms in each school. So it takes a little organization. So sorry, I'm just a little frazzled today. Anyway, let's get back to business. Okay. Looking at competency 2, right? Facilitate learning. And as you can see, it's a little bit different than competency 1. If you're looking in your Nurse Ed competency book, we've got a whole list of knowledge, skills, and attitudes that the nurse educator needs to possess in order to meet this competency, right? And some of them, I hope, are pretty easy, like show enthusiasm for teaching, learning, and nursing that inspires and motivates students. Normally, that one is really easy, but every once in a while, we will be asked to teach dry material, right? I really enjoy nursing research, but some parts of what you have to teach in an undergraduate program about nursing research can be a little bit dry. For instance, I was teaching one day about components of informed consent and what makes good, like scales when you're trying to gather data from your research participants, like you want to use a scale from 1 to 5 and you've got to include descriptors, or you're trying to ask questions and gain specific types of feedback. So I did a literature search about making teaching research a little more interesting, and I found an article called The Great Cookie Experiment. So basically, I had the students participate in the Great Cookie Experiment. So I baked 2 batches of cookies, right? So one of them had all the butter and sugar and all that good stuff in it, and the other batch of cookies had Splenda and margarine and kind of lower fat, somewhat more healthy stuff. And for my gluten-free students, I did bring some gluten-free options. But what I did is I put together an informed consent form for them to participate in this experiment. And they had to go through the informed consent and point out things about it that were positive and things about it that were problematic. And I put in a lot of problems and vague language and all sorts of stuff. So then they had to taste the 2 types of cookies, and they had to fill out a data collection form. And some of them were a Likert scale, and some of the descriptors I used were things like tastes like dirt or tastes just like my mother used to make, for different points along the scale that they had to rate. And then there was some qualitative questions. And so then they had to look at that form and do pros and cons. And then they had to tabulate the class data and do some real basic statistics on like mean, median, and mode for different scores. And then they had to summarize the qualitative data. And it was really, it made kind of what can be a dry, my lighting is kind of being weird here, sorry. That's the way it goes. What can be a dry topic and trying to turn it into something interesting and participatory, okay? So that's one of the things on here. So demonstrating enthusiasm. And then we want to use a variety of teaching strategies. So that was one example. I'm going to include an article that has to do with teaching involving QR codes, okay? And it involves QR codes and people using their phones to gather data. And as I read this article, I thought, oh my gosh, there are so many different things I could use these for people to access pieces of information as they're performing tasks as a nurse or as they're performing tasks in a skills lab. And so I'm going to attach that today. And you guys can see what you think about it. It's not too awful long. So anyway, the last one on the list here of these knowledge, skills, and attitudes is serves a role model for professional nursing. And sometimes, I can't remember if I discussed this briefly last week, when you are an educator, regardless of the setting, it's almost like you have to be on all the time because you are serving as a role model. If you have students in clinical, if you're going through a unit in the hospital, I mean, whatever it is, you kind of need to be on because people look at you as the example that they should be following. And so one of the things that educators need to do is be able to find downtimes and outlets where you don't have to be on all the time. So that's kind of another thing that we might be able to discuss this week. All right, so no assignments this week. I will try to look at your NEPD forms and overall practicum goals between the weekend and maybe Monday. I'll try to give you some feedback on those and get them back to you. And then you won't have anything to do at the end of this week. The NEPDs will be due at the end of week 4. Now remember, you're going to go into the assignment area and click on the form that I gave back to you that includes feedback. Okay? You're going to post that form to your desktop. And in week 4, you're going to open up that form that has my comments in it, and you're going to fill out the rest of the document. And I'll explain more about that next week. But every time that I give you back your NEPD form, you will save that document and then open it back up the next time you need to submit it. So it's you're continually adding to the same NEPD form, the one that I'm giving back to you with my feedback. So when you turn it in, you should have what you've written, and you should also be able to see everything that I've written up until that point. Okay? And if you have questions about it, let me know. I will try to give you plenty of feedback when I look at your forms this weekend. Okay? All right, guys. I hope this is a good week for you. I think it's an interesting topic, and I hope that as you get into your practicum experience that you are starting to get your feet wet. I'll see you in the main forum.